Imagine the year is 1880. You're listening to a string quartet play Tchaikovsky. He was a hit machine. And they're playing just as hard and fast as they can.
Now let's take exactly the same string quartet in 2025. It still takes 4 people 40 minutes to make the music. So there's been zero productivity increase in the music production of the string quartet.
What can those musicians tell us about the prices we pay for stuff? Maybe more than you think. Hi, I'm Paul Havershood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Why do prices for some things, like a night at the symphony or a haircut, keep going up? Well, the cost of other things, like a flat-screen TV, go down in price. Later in the show, we explain how an economic theory, the Baumol effect, can help us understand why we pay how much for what. Also today, the Flamin' Habanero Ghost Pepper Extra Spicy Sriracha Jalapeno Sandwich. It could be coming soon to a fast food joint near you. But why, these days, are we just so into hot? Up first, oil prices, which are on a wild ride. Saying that oil is on a roller coaster isn't a super original thing to say. I know because I use those kinds of cliches. But in one day, the price of oil shot up as high as $119 a barrel and then swung to as low as $83. So, yeah, oil is on a roller coaster because of the war in Iran and how long it may or may not go on. To help make sense of what's happening with oil and what it could mean for the economy, we've reached Rory Johnston. He's an energy analyst, and he writes the Substack Commodity Context. Rory, hi.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for being back. And, we talked at the start of the war in Iran, and at that time, oil prices, weren't really moving. The world seemed to be sort of taking it in stride. Since that time, since we last talked, what changed?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that's changed is that it hasn't ended yet. And I think when we spoke last week, my base case was that this would be done by now, but we're very, very volatile. There is a scramble for barrels every corner of the planet right now, trying almost like hopelessly to fill the gap of what has been created by the stoppage of flow through the Strait of Hormuz. And everyone's trying to get a barrel, and there just simply are not enough to go around.
Is that the big worry right now then, just the lack of physical barrels that refiners can actually get their hands on?
So what's really interesting, so if you think about it, like 2 weeks ago, there was still crude normally flowing out of the Strait of Hormuz before the war started. So those tankers that left 2 weeks ago are still on water, still heading towards their destinations, largely towards Asia. It's probably going to take them another couple weeks, maybe a month to get to where they're going. It's only at that point will we begin to feel the real physical pinch of crude supplies. What that has done, though, is that, well, again, we're not going to feel the crude tightness really hit for another 2, 3, 4 weeks. We are seeing refined products, particularly in Asia, reacting already in terms of extreme scarcity. As an example, we had Singaporean jet fuel, which is the kind of major one that people were talking about, hit over $200 a barrel equivalent last week. So we're going to see, airfares skyrocket. We're going to see the food that gets to your supermarket that's delivered by trucks, which drive on diesel. So freight rates are going to rise. We're going to see, basically everything that requires moving stuff around is going to get more expensive the longer this goes on.
From what I understand, another piece of this, though, is also there's a big issue for Gulf countries is just where to put the oil that they're producing. Is there an oil storage piece of this?
Absolutely. For a lot of these countries, they do not have a lot of domestic storage capacity. So as soon as you lose the capacity to ship your barrels out, they're kind of experiencing in some ways what the Alberta oil patch experienced in 2018, when you had a lack of egress, overflowing inventories and basically forcible curtailment of production, for lack of anywhere else to put it. So in Iraq already, we've lost 3 million barrels a day of production. Kuwait's also shut in production. It's reported today that the Saudis are beginning to shut in production. The whole thing is kind of grinding to a halt. And we've talked before about, I think last time we talked about the Strait of Hormuz effectively being like a big garden hose that kind of has a kink in it. If you unkink the hose, things will resume, which is true at the beginning. Eventually, though, this pressure builds up in these shut-ins. You can't just that's not a kink anymore that can be unkinked. That is durable, lasting loss of supply that will take days, weeks, maybe upwards of a month or two to get back up to full flowing capacity. So this is already becoming more of a longer lasting thing. It's a much longer lasting thing already than it was this time last week when we chatted.
At what point does the duration of this oil shock start to really become a serious issue when you look at, shut-ins on the production side and the whole sort of system, as you say, kind of gumming up? Like, let's say the war ends tomorrow, this lives with us for a while?
I would say if the war ended tomorrow, and I should say, if the war ended tomorrow and the Strait of Hormuz reopened full traffic 100% tomorrow, I still think that we would feel the ramifications of this for another 2, 3, 4 months. I try not to be a doomer here. I think that I'm normally very optimistic about the oil market's capacity to sort of all manner of shocks, as we've seen repeatedly, from Russia's invasion of Ukraine to COVID itself to the stoppage of traffic and attacks in the Red Sea by the Houthis. There's lots of things that the market has actually been able to deal with. But just to put in perspective of why this is different, it's when something becomes a different scale to the point that it's something different in kind entirely. So 20 million barrels a day is what's currently going through the Strait, roughly, give or take. That's roughly the same as the peak of demand loss during March and April of 2020, during COVID, when you and I were locked inside and airplanes weren't flying and I was still basically wiping down Amazon boxes with Lysol wipes. Like, that's the kind of behavioral environment that is required to reduce demand to the levels that we're talking about. And that was obviously enough of a demand loss to push oil prices negative for the first time in history. This could easily do the opposite. And I think, again, when we think about what that means, it's going to manifest as an acute pump price pain shock. We are just going to pay higher and higher and higher prices. People are like, well, why are we paying higher prices? We are self-sufficient, which is like fair and true in a way. But the issue is that if we don't pay the higher prices, then someone's going to figure out a way to export our fuel to somewhere else that's going to pay the higher prices.
So it's just like supply and demand then. If they want it bad enough somewhere else and are willing to pay for it, then that's something that's going to drive up prices here as well. So then, Rory, how high could gas prices go if all this keeps going on?
Yeah, so I think the peak of average tax-inclusive Canadian pump prices in 2022 hit, I think, $2.20 a liter. That's how high we're talking about here. Like, we're talking $2.50 a liter, upwards of $3. The futures market in the U.S. Was implying a $4 and in excess of a $4 a gallon U.S. pump price. So that's where this is going. And again, it has to go there because otherwise we're not going to have enough gasoline in North America. That's the issue, is if we don't bid up those prices, there will be shortages.
Okay, so then we're staring at higher gasoline prices, which is something that would be inflationary. Is this then the type of thing that would be on the Bank of Canada's radar and something that could, say, like, ripple into people's mortgages?
Absolutely. And I think the central bankers hate supply shocks. So, like, maybe the Bank of Canada is not going to raise rates, but if they were going to be lowering rates, they certainly aren't right now. Normally, in normal moments, central banks typically look through food and energy prices, which is why they talk about core CPI, which is CPI excluding the most volatile components like food and energy. And they do that not because they're cherry picking, but because they're looking for underlying inflationary pressure in the system, basically labor inflation, housing inflation, all this stuff in the system, rather than kind of like gas prices spiked and then they fell. And you don't want to overreact to that stuff. But what we saw in 2022 is central bankers became very anxious and sensitive to the basically the pump price effect on the psychology of inflation, our inflation expectations. Because while, like, do you know the current price of copper or steel or anything else? No. You know the price of gas because you drove past 8 signs with the price of gas on it going down the road. So that will drive psychology in a way that other food prices, let's say, might not. So when you are, if inflation drives you to worry about your spending power, and that drives you to ask for a bigger raise from your employer, that's when this moves from headline inflation down to core inflation. We're not there yet. And I don't think we're going to get there because I don't think this is going to last, because I don't think it can last. I think that the White House has to pivot here, because if not, we're entering this kind of like very doomy scenario that I don't like to think about, but it is very, very real, and it's getting realer by the day.
Okay, then, so if you think about how long the war could potentially last, do you think there's a point where economic pressures just could become too much for the White House?
Well, I think that will be when Trump gets, I think, most acutely aware of the situation. He's watching oil prices and futures, no doubt. But it's when, at the town halls around the country, people start basically like, or at every gas station, back in 2022, there were those stickers like the Biden, like I did that, like pointing to the pump price. We're not far off Trump having that exact same treatment. And again, he came in on a mandate of cost containment and consumer cost pressures. This is the exact opposite of what he said he was. He literally came in saying, I was going to get out of unpopular forever wars, and I'm going to lower the cost of energy. He just embarked in a war in Iran and had the largest one-day price spike in the history of the market. We're in completely uncharted territory, and I just am not confident that Trump himself has even yet accepted the position that he has put himself in. I think he is still in denial, and he's attempting to find a way out that just simply doesn't exist.
Well, Rory, thank you for that, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Anytime, Paul. Always happy.
Rory Johnston is an energy analyst. He writes the Substack, Commodity Context. On your Radio and Buy podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Habersrud. Hot and spicy. Spicy habanero. Fiery triple reaper ghost pepper. Look at any fast food menu these days, and chances are it's muy caliente. Jennifer Keane, in a story that first aired earlier this season, looks at why so much of what's now on offer is so dang hot.
Asham Agrawal recently went on a culinary trip in Mississauga, down the Lava Chicken Trail.
I went to 5 spots. At some of the spots, we got multiple types of spicy chicken because there was a place that...
In one day, he tried 8 different dishes, each one spicier than the last.
By the time we got to the last one, it was inedible. It was just spice. It was literally just... That's all I tasted. My mouth was on fire. I was running around the parking lot. I could see strangers coming out of their cars very concerned for me.
Asham is a food influencer in Toronto. He says fiery tastes have always been part of the city's restaurant scene. But these days...
I would challenge anybody to find any large restaurant chain or fast food spot that doesn't have a spicy item on their menu.
Claire Conahan is with Data Central, which tracks food and beverage trends. She says 95% of restaurants in the U.S. now have at least one thing on the menu that's spicy.
Also, we're seeing not just we have one, but everything has spice.
This past spring, fast food restaurants launched 76 new spicy menu items. And we're not just talking about Chipotle and Taco Bell.
We've got the spicy McMuffin, right? Where McDonald's took their flagship product and just added a spicy sauce. Nothing too complicated, but that has never had a sauce. And here they are tinkering with their most beloved favorite.
So why is everyone bringing the heat? Adam Brown owns a hot sauce company called Too Hot, Too Bad, No Refund. He says Canadian tastes, including his own, are changing.
I grew up not eating overly spicy, right? Kind of Canadiana palate and, meat and potatoes. And, as I started to get more and more introduced to different multi-culti kind of foods, I think that's where my palate grew into it.
A lot of Canadians now come from countries where chilies and peppers are everyday ingredients. And people who don't come from those traditions, they're learning to love the burn.
There's a younger group, more adventurous, that want to try things. They want to experience new flavors. They don't just want to keep eating just for sustenance. They want to live and love what they're eating and really enjoy that.
Enjoy? I don't know. That's not what it looks like on TikTok, which is the place to go if you want to see people eat with sweat pouring down their face.
That's hot.
My eyes! It literally burns my eyeballs.
Oh, it's getting worse. It's getting worse. Oh, it's getting worse.
People love watching you suffer while you eat spicy food, and people just love the challenge of it.
Asham Agarwal says spicy food challenges make for good publicity, and restaurants need that right now. Canadians aren't eating out as much these days because of the high cost of living. Inviting people to try your flaming hot El Diablo quesadilla, it's a good way to reel us back in.
Because the vast majority of spicy limited time offerings that we see now are essentially just an adaptation of a current menu item. So you can get all this marketing buzz from launching this cool new spicy item, but you can do it fast and you can do it cheap.
As someone who dines out for a living, Asham has to make sure he doesn't eat too much of the hot stuff. And he says it'll be a while before he hits the lava chicken trail again.
Eating spicy food back to back to back to back was definitely a challenge. My body is recovering.
For the cost of living, I'm Jennifer Keane.
The next day was rough.
La 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 lava, chicken. Steve's lava chicken, yeah, it's tasty as hell. Ooh, mamacita, now you're ringing the bell. Crispy and juicy, now you're having a stack. Ooh, super spicy, it's a lava attack.
This is The Cost of Living. Listen to us on CBC Radio 1 or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paul Havershrud. So Daniel Nerman, what's something you buy that just keeps getting more expensive?
My Americano. For the longest time, it only costs like $3. And now with tip, it's always $5. Always. But I think, it's probably money well spent because I'm pretty unpleasant when I'm uncaffeinated.
No, Danielle, not you.
Oh, and also haircuts.
Oh, yeah, well, my haircut's more expensive.
I'm sure I spend more than you on haircuts, and not just because I have more hair than you, because I have a schnoodle.
So, your schnoodle has a stylist?
Yes, that curly hair, it gets matted so easily. He's at the groomer pretty often, and just like my Americano, every year that service costs me a little more.
A guy like this can take quite a while. It's more precise, I guess, more scissoring, more making sure everything's, in tip-top shape.
Emily Copeland is a groomer at Petropolitan in Calgary, and when I was there, she was putting the finishing touches on Archie the poodle. You good boy? Yeah, you're a good boy, aren't you? So you're nearing the end here, hey, with him?
Yeah, we're almost done. It's been a 2.5-hour process.
It's a long time.
Archie spends more time in the chair than I do, but he's getting a bath, a blow dry, you gotta fluff all that fluffy hair. It takes time, and all that primping isn't cheap. A poodle groom will run you anywhere from $100 to $140.
So clearly Archie looks better than I do.
He's adorable. But, services like dog grooming are labor intensive, and wages have gone up a lot in the last few years.
Labor on its own at a base level is higher than it's been, and you want to make sure that you're paying people what the market dictates and demands.
Haley Seidel owns Petropolitan, and she says right now, if you want a really great groomer to stick around, you need to pay them a lot.
Depending on their skill level and how many dogs they're able to do in a day. We see some of our groomers making between $60 and $80K a year.
Okay, that's like way more than minimum wage.
After rent, Haley says paying her staff is the second most expensive line item in her budget.
And that makes sense, right? Because her business is one that runs on people.
Yeah, and those people can only do so much. One groomer can do about 6 dogs a day, and that doesn't change from year to year. But like I said, her labor costs have gone up. So what does she do?
I'm assuming she raises prices.
Yeah, over time, her prices have to go up. And there's an economic theory that explains why this happens, especially in services, like dog grooming and childcare, jobs that depend on people. It's called Baumel's cost disease. It's named after the American economist William Baumol. It's also known as the Baumol effect.
How did it get downgraded to an effect from a disease?
He became less pessimistic.
Okay.
Alex Tabarrok is a Canadian economist and professor at George Mason University in Virginia, and he's a big fan of the Baumol effect. He even wrote a book about it a few years ago called Why Are the Prices So Damn High? And Alex says it's because of productivity. Just take barbering as an example.
There's been virtually zero improvement in productivity of barbering in over 100 years, right? At least 100 years. And it still takes the barber almost as much time to cut my hair as it did 50 years ago, except I have less hair. Other than that, it takes the barber just as long to cut my hair.
So the act of getting your hair cut, like the experience, that really hasn't changed much. But what has changed is how much you're paying.
Yeah, and that goes for a lot of services powered by people. But not every industry depends on human labor in the same way. So some stuff can see prices go up more slowly or even go down in price. That's another part of the Baumol effect.
Well, give us an example.
Toys, clothing, electronics. You remember the department store, Eaton's?
Of course.
Well, I had some fun looking through an Eaton's catalog from 1975. Oh my gosh, they sold everything. Sewing machines, typewriters.
Extremely stylish bell-bottoms, I'm assuming?
Of course, and matching velour pantsuits in every color. But what really surprised me was how expensive appliances were, like a microwave.
And they were how much?
$800. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $5,000 in today's money.
Did it fly?
Today, you can get a microwave shipped to your door for $140. That's a 96% drop in price. Another example, computers.
And what's happened there?
The price of computing has gone down a lot over the decades, especially if you consider how that work used to be done and who did it.
A computer was originally a person. And so the physicists, they would hire some computers to do these long, laborious calculations. Now the capital intensive, the chips, the computer chips, they do those calculations.
If people were still doing those calculations today, the cost of computing would be sky high and not available to everyone.
But of course, that's not the case.
No, computer prices have come down. Unlike services, manufacturing has become a lot more productive. Innovation and technology have sped things up, and we've figured out how to make things with fewer people.
We have factories now which run it literally in the dark, because you don't need any humans in the factory almost at all. So anything that you can automate, these tend to fall in price over time.
So the more you take people out of the equation, the cheaper things get.
Okay, so that's good for the prices we pay, but maybe not so good for stuff like, manufacturing jobs.
No, we have lost a lot of those jobs in Canada because of automation, but the jobs that are still around in manufacturing, they're more high-skilled and pay more. Now, it's important to note that the reason wages go up and prices for manufactured goods drop, that's not all because of the Baumol effect.
Well, no, of course not. It's a complicated world. There's a lot of factors that go into stuff like this.
And the Baumol effect is just one theory to help explain what's going on. But what it says is that when wages go up in productive industries like manufacturing, that can help lift salaries for everyone.
Wages have to equalize across the economy, if not instantly, over time, because who's going to become a dog groomer when they could be going into the manufacturing sector, or they could be doing a lot of other jobs?
If you want your favorite barber to keep cutting your hair, you can't pay him 1975 prices.
Because if you did, no one would want to cut your hair.
Exactly. But the thing about wage increases is there's a bit of a paradox going on, because everyone wants their salary to go up. We all love a raise. But when everyone gets a raise, prices go up too, and we don't love that.
Okay, so then when your barber charges you more for a haircut,
you should feel happy for him.
And I do, and I will. Okay, so the Baumol effect says we'll pay more and more money to incentivize people to do stuff. So does that just mean that salaries for service sector jobs are just going to keep going up and up and up?
Yes, unless something changes. And some industries have found ways to swap out the expensive labor for the cheap labor.
As an example?
IT, call centers. You see a lot of outsourcing.
Yeah, in those kinds of industries, we've had globalization. We've seen cheaper labor in other countries come along, and that really changed the game.
And something like that could happen again if AI turns out to be as big a deal as some people think. Now, we don't really know what it could do to service jobs like plumbing or nursing, but
maybe today, like robots could do it. Maybe. Maybe you only need one human instead of 2 or 3. So if you can replace something which is labor intensive with something which is capital intensive, then you can get productivity improvements.
Okay, well, let's just say AI-powered robots start doing more and more jobs. Then what?
According to the Baumol effect, prices will come down for services. But the robots still have to do the job well. Give my schnoodle a schnauzer cut.
I feel like that's still a little ways away.
Someone has invented a machine that automates the dog washing and drying part of the whole grooming thing. It's called Woof Woof Lux. It's like watching a dog going through a car wash.
I kind of feel like the best part of that might be the name. Like, Woof Woof Lux is great, but does it work?
It hasn't really taken off. And that's because there's just some jobs that will always require a personal touch.
I think we still got some time for the dog groomers. Dog groomers and dentistry. I don't think I want a robot quite yet, digging around in my teeth.
Robot tries to give me a root canal. I'm biting that robot.
Ouch.
Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome.
That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Daniel Nerman, Jenny DeRosio, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Habertrud. Thanks for listening.